Hello, friends, YouTube. Welcome to another episode of Opa's Vintage Garage. Today we've got some Allis Chalmers sales films for you from the 50s. Please sit back, enjoy, comment. Please comment, guys. I love reading your comments and sharing some of my stories. So sit back, enjoy, and God bless. Thanks.
Our country is a big country. Big in many ways. Big in miles. In resources, in its population, and in its heart. When disaster strikes, these sizes really show up. An example was the reaction of our whole nation to the suffering and hardship caused by the unprecedented snowfall which smothered the western plains during the winter of 48 and 49. It was no sudden catastrophe. It started quite normally. During the night of November 18, a blizzard roared over the plains. This storm passed, however, and people carried on in their usual winter fashion. But a few days later, there was another blizzard, and another, then another. Huge drifts blocked roads and railways, piled up around towns, villages, and ranches, and left many completely marooned. 300,000 persons were bound in hardship and isolation. Over $3 million worth of cattle were in immediate jeopardy. Each day took its toll in human lives and dead cattle. Word flashed out to the nation. Western plains, snowbound. When the barrage of blizzards continued to blast the area, Operation Snowbound was conceived. The Fifth Army tackled the 139,000 square miles of deep rolling white. Tractors hacked at the vast snow sea, but more help, knowledge, and experience was needed. A call went out for contractors, operators, and additional power equipment. The response was quick. Men willing and able to do this work through long, cold hours answered the call for help. American industry backed these men by shipping Red Ball Express, all available bulldozers, motor graders, and hay balers. A formidable group. The Fifth Army, American industry, contractors, equipment operators, and more than 1,000 pieces of modern, powerful equipment rammed into the ever-deepening snow. Now the battle clanked into high gear. A brutal, furious battle, the greatest mass bulldozer and snow equipment operation in history. Bitter cold, 15 and 20 degrees below zero, joined forces with the killer blizzards against mere man and his machines. Motor graders battled stubborn ice-coated drifts day and night. Vicious biting winds punished the equipment operators and rescue teams. In this nip-and-tuck battle, food was delivered to isolated ranches, hay was dropped to starving, half-frozen cattle, and some main roads were opened. New snow and winds roared in from the Rockies, threatening to stop Operation Snowbound. The worst winter in history was in full swing. It was a severe test for men and machines. Blizzard-wise operators passed the word on how to tackle the deep snow. Push it off in layers, level the dips, until you've worked your way down to solid footing. Paths to haystacks alone made up a gigantic operation. Sitting in lonely isolation, the half-buried stacks were inaccessible. Cattle couldn't get at them. Fifth Army contractors and bulldozers opened trails to the feed and saved thousands of cattle. In many cases, whole herds were kept alive by these hard-hitting machines. Tough, steady power ripped life lanes in the vast white blanket which smothered the tremendous acreage of beef-producing ranches. Mountainous drifts crumpled. Slowly, the men and machines rolled back the snow. Sick, starving cattle needed hay, lots of hay, quickly. Range herds, still in good form, had to get to stacks for immediate feeding. Working around the clock was the only way to do the job. Cold, hungry, tired, and alone, operators kept their rugged tractors working, bucking, smashing, and pushing at the heavy ice-layered snow. It was a job for men, and men did it. In spite of this all-out war organization and the efforts of valiant Army and contractor crews, cattle continued to perish under the Siberian conditions. Ranch yards were littered with dead animals. Carcasses, dragged in from the range, were stacked for burial near the barns. Out in the range, dead cattle were grim monuments to the tragedy of the plains. An unknown number of calves perished on the blizzard-pounded range, and no accurate count will ever be compiled. A shovel-equipped tractor owned by this ranch kept many thousand head of cattle alive. This versatile machine fed marooned herds and opened access trails. Snow was removed from around stacks. 9-ton stacks were pushed onto lowboys and hauled across miles of Arctic desolation to stricken herds. This tractor became a friend of the cattle. They came to recognize the powerful purr of its smooth-running two-cycle diesel engine and its bright orange color. Frequently, cattle would attempt to follow it, knowing that it was going for feed. Young calves in the ranch pens were kept alive with feed brought in by the tractor. The deep drifts were impassable to horses, autos, or trucks. The only vehicle capable of motion on this 28,000-acre ranch was the tractor. This was typical throughout the three-state disaster area. Tractors, manned by determined iron men, kept the loss of human life and cattle at the lowest possible level. So more hay could be transported over greater distances to starving cattle, farm machinery manufacturers diverted a sizable portion of their baler output to the disaster area. In many cases, baling machines were hauled right to the stacks. Willing crews of ranchers and hands fed hay into these machines, which rolled up bales at the rate of 4 a minute. Old men, young men, ranch hands and ranchers baled hay day after day in all kinds of weather. Biting cold, snow, and wind made little difference. Wherever there was a baler, there were men to feed it. Hay for direct feeding was baled at tremendous rates. National Guardsmen and private citizens kept their vehicles on the road constantly, delivering bales of hay to ranchers unable to reach their own haystacks. In the case of ranches which were so isolated that there was neither time nor machinery available to break through, National Guard airplanes were loaded up with precious bales, and the hay was delivered direct to the cattle by the same methods employed in supplying our combat troops in the last war. Baled hay was the answer to many a rancher's prayer. Operation Snowbound is a story of disaster, but it's a story, too, of disaster averted. 4,000 persons, plus the hardy citizens of the affected area, subdued the almost overwhelming force of the elements by working ceaselessly under the most severe conditions. The Army, Air Force, Civil Air Patrols, National Guard, Naval Reserve, Red Cross, contractors, equipment operators, and American industry stopped a major catastrophe that would have been national in scope. Operation Snowbound, the Fifth Army's far-flung digging, plowing, bulldozing, and rescue mission in this blizzard-blitzed area, demonstrated once again the bigness of this nation, especially the bigness of its spirit and the bigness of its heart.
Had plenty of pumpkin pine to work with. Man, those were the days. The pumpkin pine once flourished in many parts of the northeastern United States. But when we finish logging them out of here, they'll probably be gone for a long time. Anyway, in sufficient quantities for commercial use. We're clearing these out because some are already dead and many of the others have grown old and rotten at the core. They'll soon die and eventually fall and molder away without serving any useful purpose. Down there is our logging camp. It's fairly easy to get in here by air, but roads are few and far between in this vast wilderness. That big patch of snow-covered ice is Moose Lake, where we're booming the pumpkin pine. That's one of our log piles there in the snow. We'll float them to the mill come the spring thaw. Hauling 100 million feet of timber out of dense frozen wilderness is quite a chore. It calls for a special kind of rugged, sure-footed power that can get around easy and do lots of different jobs, that can get good traction on glare ice and not conk out even when the mercury slides down to 30 below. Our dependable crawler tractors are the only answer. Why not log it out in the summertime? Well, the country all around here is full of bogs and marshes and lakes and streams. And our job is all around easier, except for the bitter cold, of course, when everything's frozen over. For example, in order to get the heavy tractors in here, we waited until the lakes and streams were frozen hard, then used them for roads. We brought the powerful crawlers in because we need their kind of pull, to tow, haul, and drag with drawbar or winch and cable. And because we need their kind of push, too. On glare ice, or anywhere else for that matter, only the big crawler tractors can apply such tremendous force to these logs, which weigh tons. These husky steel brutes do in minutes what it would take many men and horses, many freezing hours of hard labor to accomplish. When we got here, our dozers had to bull through blowdowns, swamp their way across mushy bogs, and shove heavy boulders out of frozen stream beds to build our haul roads into the pumpkin pine. Our road tender repairs and corduroys the soft spots and some of the turns with small logs. This helps to support the weight of our tractors and keeps our sleighs from slipping sidewise off the road. And whenever we need another road, we just slam the dozers in there and build it. It's all part of our daily work. We depend on power for cutting, too. You seldom see the sharp, steely flash of an axe or the rhythmic whip of a cross-cut saw in the woods anymore. Not on the big jobs, anyway. They've given way almost entirely to power-driven chainsaws that do a faster, neater job. This tree is 4.5 feet through at the butt, and the bark is 5 inches thick, but the chainsaw will chew through it fast. The kerf, or notch, is quickly but carefully cut and cleaned out. The kerf has to be exactly right, because that's how we aim the fall of the tree. We decide ahead of time where we want it to lie when it comes down, and then fell it right on that line. As the cut nears completion, all eyes are drawn skyward, watching for the top to tilt. Ears are tuned for the warning crack at the butt, the cue for the rousing cry of timber! As soon as the tree's down, the scaler marches it off in 20-foot lengths, or chunks as we call them. Then the sawmen will move in and chunk up the tree. In every phase of our work, we're careful to protect the pine seedlings that will eventually reforest this area and the saplings that are already flourishing. A tractor skids the chunks out to the nearest yard, a clearing where we pile them temporarily. We don't take much time when we knock off for lunch. You feel the cold too much if you stop moving for long. It's not fancy fare, mostly cold baked beans and steaming hot coffee, but it's mighty filling. We'll get them down as soon as possible, then get on the go again. The gobby birds take over and clean up the scraps we leave. Back on the job, the saw bites in again, another kerf is cut and cleaned out. Timber! another pumpkin pine hits the forest floor. Our scaler marks it off, and we chunk it up. On and on the job goes day after day through 100 million feet of timber. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the forest, one of our yards of logs is being pulled down in order to load out a sleigh train. Tractor power does the job with winch and cable. Here, our versatile crawler tractors do triple duty. This tractor will also furnish power for the hoist that loads the logs and then will haul the loaded sleigh train out to the lake. The logs are loaded on the sleighs in short order. Only an expert crew could make it look so simple and easy. They move quickly and surely with practiced teamwork. They do the thinking and the guiding, while the tractor-powered winch-controlled cable does most of the work. They whisk up a huge log and load it securely in place in a matter of seconds. It doesn't take the boys long to load out a sleigh train, and as soon as one is ready for the road, the tractor comes up front to hitch onto it and get it moving. Then starts the long haul out to the boom on the lake. Along the way, that rear-mounted winch and cable comes in mighty handy again. On a very steep grade, the operator holds the train at a standstill while he moves the tractor forward, paying out cable from the winch as he goes. Then he holds the tractor at a standstill and pulls the train up with the winch and cable. Up here in the Maine woods, we call this winching out. One more time ought to do it. It's over the hump, and we're on our way again. A sleigh train snaking through the woods is like homespun down-east poetry in motion. The smooth, unfaltering power of the thundering tractor, the easy grace of the twisting train, the crisp crunch of the frozen snow, the clean, sparkling cold that keens the senses, the sharp, tangy breath of the pine. It reaches right down into the core of a man, gets into his blood and his marrow, makes him know that it's great to be a logger and good to be alive. And now we're back where we started, getting in position to winch off another sleigh train load of logs so we can bulldoze them into the boom pile. Nearby, a woodsman bores holes in the boom logs that will eventually surround and hold the rest of the logs together when they're floated to the mill. In the old days, before we had these powerful tractors, building access roads, moving logs from the stump to the yard and from the yard to the boom was back-breaking, man-killing work every step of the way. But not anymore. Nowadays, you'll find these massive crawler tractors, strong as bull elephants and sure-footed as mountain goats, right in the thick of every modern logging operation. Just like you've seen them here, logging out the last of our virgin pumpkin pine.